sound. Let me see. Thank you. I'm going to repeat myself all over again. Can you hear me again? Can you hear me now? Just put your comments in the chat. Can you hear me? Good, good, good. Very good. So let me start all over again. Welcome back to Virtual House Church. It's a blessing to be once again with you. I'm your host, Juan Carlos. I'm going to be running solo today. Unfortunately, Jake is not going to be able to make it. He is away of home. But I hope that we are going to have a good time, a blessed time together, starting this amazing cycle of 2nd Samuel, Shmuel Bet in Hebrew. And I really hope, this cycle we have been doing here in Virtual House Church has been a blessing to you for your own walk, in the same way it has been a blessing to us here in Virtual House Church. As we always do, I want to invite you, all of you, to visit the Virtual House Church website. And let me put this here in the screen. Just give me a second. Here we go. So to invite you to go to Virtual House Church website and to go into the different information and different material that is here in the Virtual House Church website. You will find so many material that our dear brother Rob Skiba collected throughout the years, and he put this in just one place for the benefit of all this big mishpacha around the world, in order to study the word of Yahuwah, in order to go into different topics that has been collected throughout the years, and topics, truth that Yahuwah has given us throughout this walk and this year. So you have all the Torah cycle over here with so many materials being collected throughout the years. And not only that, you have important information as well about defending Messiah, coming out of Babylon, also about Paul and his teachings. So I will invite all of you to visit this site. And not only that, just to remember, as I always telling you week after week, is to remember that Virtual House Church is a ministry that our beloved brother Rob Skiba and his wife Chile Skiba started back in 2012. You can find the entire story of Virtual House Church even here at home in the Virtual House Church website. And the reason that we are here continuing with this work that was started by our brother Rob and Sheila is because of obedience. And I was sharing a little bit of this a few hours ago in my channel about how much important it is to be obedient to the voice of Yahuwah. And here we have the perfect example of Rob and Sheila being obedient and setting this platform, this project of Virtual House Church, this ministry that has been blessing us for so long. And we are so blessed to continue with this ministry that is helping us and blessing us, all of us that we have been joining for so long. If you are new coming to this channel, Rob Skiba channel, and you are wondering who's running this thing, Chila decided to continue Virtual House Church here in Rob Skiba channel in order to continue the legacy. And not only the legacy, is to continue being obedient, as I said, to the voice of Yahuwah, and to continue this blessing to all of us by studying week after week the word of Yahuwah. So, in case you want to go and visit the new site of Virtual House Church, it's just a matter to click here, as you can see in the screen, to this icon over here. Just click over there and you will be directed immediately to the new site of Virtual House Church. It's basically the same information that you just have in the previous version, and but with the new format, the new face, with the new logo of Virtual House Church, as you can see in the screen, and with the same information that we have in the collecting and sharing before. The only difference is that if you go to the left side and you go to this week's study, our brother Jake has been helping us to update previous broadcasts of this study of a new cycle of Virtual House Church with the studies of the book of Joshua, the book of Judges, and also the first Samuel. he has not been able yet to upload the rest of the studies, but you have it here in the channel. So in case you're going to go back and you missed those studies from the past, the invitation is that you can go to the site. You will be directed directly to the studies, the video studies in the channel. I believe those ones we did it in the Light to the Nations channel, but you have the link over there. And for the ones for 2 Samuel, you can go directly here to Rob Skiba YouTube channel, and you will find all this information here in this place as well. So last word about it. Please go to the site, study by yourself, and not only that, also share this information with others, because this is the least that we can do, is to share the light of the word of Yahuwah. And this is an amazing and a good way to do so. So one additional thing I want to share with you is that just to remind the cycle and the portion we will study today. Let me switch something here. Okay, you can see it. We are studying the week number 41. That is chapter 15 and 16 of the book of 2 Samuel. And I titled this portion in Hebrew is Beheshivani, that it means in English, it means he shall bring me back. And this is so beautiful, because we will see few pictures and few foreshadows, most probably, as we speak and as we read this portion, with the life of David and the life of Absalom and different other things that we will let the Ruach to guide us. So, it's from chapter 15 until the end of chapter 16 that we are going to study today. So let me put my camera back once again, and here you can see me. So once again, welcome back, and I really hope keep this broadcast in your prayers, so we will have the presence of Yahuwah and the Ruach guiding us today as we study His Word, because I think, and that's what you have in your heart. Same thing that all of us, no matter where we are, including myself, that I'm I would say in the farthest part on the south of this world, also with the same intention in the heart, is to study His Word, is to be able to receive and understand and learn more of His truth. So let's as we speak and as we study, also keep praying to Yahuwah to guide us in this study, in order to open our mind, our understanding, our ears and our eyes to the truth that He wants to teach us today. So before continuing, Jay has been helping us, doing an amazing job in order to bring more music to Virtual House Church. And it's going to be my pleasure, my blessing, to share with you interesting surprise that Jake was preparing for you. So we have new music to share with you, and this special music was prepared just for Virtual House Church. So I want to share this with you, and this is something so beautiful, because this couple, I don't know them in person. I have not been in touch with them, but their music is so amazing that I do believe that Yahuwah is using them in this time. So let me share this music with you, and hope this is gonna be something you will enjoy. So here we go.
Shabbat Shalom, Virtual House Church. It is so good to be here to worship with you. I'm Linda Mitchell, and this is my wife, Ruth Mitchell. We are Left and Right Ministries, and we're just so thankful to be able to worship with you. The first song we're going to sing is called O Yisrael, and it's really that call from Yah, the call from Yahuwah, saying, O Yisrael, turn to me, bow before me, and lay down your idols. And I think that is our absolute call as people who've been grafted in by the blood of the Messiah into Israel. We've been given that grace and mercy to be called His chosen people, so we should turn to Him and worship Him. That's what the song's all about. If you know it, sing along with us. 1, 2, 3, 4. long to know our great atonement as we wander the wilderness. We lift our pride to receive His rest. Oh, who is our Elohim? Oh, His voice is calling. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Bitter wrestling in our soul, we long to know our great atonement as we wander the wilderness. We lift our pride to receive His breath. Who is our Elohim? Oh, His voice is calling. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Oh, praising the Lord. We praise the El of Yaakov, who was and is to come. We praise the El of Yaakov, who gave His one and only Son to make us free and forgiven. Oh, we praise the El of Yaakov. We praise the El of Yaakov, who was and is to come. We praise the El of Yaakov, who gave His one and only Son to make us free and forgiven. Oh, we praise the El of Yaakov. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Israel, lay down your idols. God's Yahuwah, let us come to Mount Zion, praising the Lord. Oh, we're praising the Lord. Israel, lay down your idol. Hallelujah. Amen.
Wow, that's an amazing blessing to have this blessed couple, sharing with us this song today. Let me change here something. Okay, that's much better. So yeah, it's amazing. I think Yahuwah is raising his servants in these days in order to work as a body. We are as a body. We are different parts of the body of Mashiach, of Messiah, and he has been calling us to his purposes with different tasks, and we need to be obedient to his voice in order to do our part, in this last days, and to do our part in his kingdom. You and me has purposes. He has called you in order to do part of his job, part of the project, and part of the objective and the target that he has for his kingdom. So we need to be very attentive, listening to his voice, and also to what the Ruach is guiding us to do. So, before we start with the study, I will invite you to close your eyes and let's pray together to Abba, to our Father, in this moment. Our Father, we want to give thanks to you in this moment because once again, you give us the opportunity to connect with your people in the four corners of the earth, with the intention in our heart to study your word. In this moment, O Yahuwah, we want to ask you to guide us in this study, that your presence be with us today, as you always do, that you can open our understanding to your word in order to see what we have not seen before, in order to receive the food that you want to give us today. I pray for all your people connected today, that you can unite us in your Ruach, in your spirit, that we can be one in you through Yahushua HaMashiach, our Messiah, that we can be one in love in order to follow the steps of Yahushua, your Son. Also, I pray in this moment for those that are not able to join live, but are able to see this study later on, that you can bless them with this word, that you can bless all of us with everything that you have to share with us today. Use us in your hands, that you can be your servants, the vessels of your presence, that we can feel your presence in our heart. I pray for everybody that is going through difficulties, that you can be with them, that you can heal the sick, that you can give hope for those ones that are with the lack of hope, that you can strengthen the one that is weak in this moment, that you can guide us in your way in this moment, or the difficulties and uncertainties, that we can trust in you with all our heart. Thank you, Abba, for being with us. Thank you for your presence, for your Son, Yahushua, and thank you for your word. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen. So, as I said, we will continue with chapter 15, and let me share the screen with you. So we are going to read together, and we will see what the Ruach is guiding us on today's study in the cycle on chapter 15 and chapter 16. I don't have that much prepared, but we will let the Ruach to tell us and to teach me and to share with all of us, including myself, on what is in this portion. So, as you remember, last week we were studying about the life of David and all the situation that happened with Amnon and Absalom and Tamar. All the situation that also David was bringing his son back after he was leaving and running away because of what he did to his brother Amnon, because he was revenging to what happened to his sister Tamar. So we are picking this story from that point, and we will read what's happening later on. And one thing that's important to remember, and we were highlighting this in the portion last week, is that everything that started to happen in the life of David somehow is connected to the curse and the punishment upon David and his house because of what he did. And this is basically the word of Yahuwah provided by his prophet Nathan, being fulfilled in the life of David. And exactly what we are going to see in this portion today, we see an additional fulfillment of what David received as a kind of a curse or punishment of what he did. So let's read together, and let's see what the Ruach is bringing to all of us today. So it says, starting in the verse 1, chapter 15, 2 Samuel. And it came to be after this that Absalom prepared a chariot and horses for himself, and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. And it came to be, whenever anyone who had a complaint came to the sovereign for a right ruling, that Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" And when he said, "Your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel," Absalom would say to him, "Look, your matters are good and right, but you have nobody from the sovereign to hear you." And Absalom would say, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any complaint or case would come to me, and I shall let right be done to him." And it came to be, whenever anyone came near him to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. And Absalom did this to all Israel who came to the sovereign for right ruling. And Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So let me stop there for a moment, because we know, and I was sharing with you last week, that sometimes Yahuwah do things in a way that we cannot understand. And I was sharing what was my thought last week, is that maybe Yahuwah was orchestrating something in order to pave the way for Shlomo Solomon to become the king. Because Amnon was the firstborn. He was the heir to the throne of David. And he died because Absalom took his life because of what happened with Tamar. And the second one that was somehow being considered and being highlighted among the children of David was Absalom. Everybody was looking at him because he was tall, he was beautiful, and many things that we were reading last week. And what we see here, after David brought him back to Jerusalem, we see Absalom taking somehow advantage to uh, to his position among the children of Israel. And I think all of us, we have been facing situations like this in our own life. And also we see this happening even in society. Just to put an example, most probably you have seen this happening lately in politics. Politicians sometimes always do these kind of things. Why? Because they want to get into people's heart in order to convince people to follow them, in order to put some kind of ideology on the people and to put some kind of thoughts in the people to believe in them and to follow them on what they're doing. We see this happening all over the place. And it's not because of politicians. I'm just taking this example. We see this maybe at work. We see this in our surroundings, in our neighbors, and then in our families. I don't know. You can name it. Why is this? Because, this is part of what is in our flesh. This intention, this push to do these kind of things, and maybe it's more available or more visible in certain peoples than in others. And in this case, we see, what's the idea of Absalom doing this? He's trying to gain people's heart. He's trying to position himself in front of the people. And I think it is speaking a lot in different aspects of in the kingdom of Yah, speaking a lot spiritually as well. And we will discuss about this in a moment. So let's continue reading. So it says in the verse 7, and it came to be at the end of 40 years that Absalom said to the sovereign, "Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I vowed to Yahuwah." In the footnote in this version, this is the scripture version from the Institute of Scripture Research, the version that I'm using here. It says that there's certain manuscripts that instead of 40 years, it said 4 years. Okay, so it's something that we don't know in this case, and maybe it would be interesting to study what's the situation. But let's stay for 40 years. Can you imagine? David was in advanced years. If the case was 40 years, he was very advanced in years when all of this with Absalom that we are going to read now in a minute happened. So all the physical strength of David wasn't the same. He was at the end part of his reign, most probably, if 40 years is exactly what we are reading here. So we see all these things of Absalom trying to prepare the ground under the scenario to do something in the years that maybe David, his father, wasn't in the top of his strength. So it's important that the enemy is taking advantage. And this is something that we speak spiritually, is taking advantage when we are weak. Is taking advantage when we are not so well prepared and with the top of our strength in order to do something to make us stumble. And that's why, it's so important that even in the times of weakness, we need to be close to Yahuwah in order for him to give us the strength. We have seen in this cycle of First Samuel and Second Samuel is that David was a man that was going through many distresses. He was being persecuted by Saul. He was being persecuted by fighting with the Philistines. And we saw him going through very difficult situations in life. And this is one of them. But also we see David conquering. We also see David being so strong that he was able to defeat this giant, Goliath. And he did it because not having the physical strength, he did it because he has the spiritual strength that is coming directly from Yahuwah Elohim by his Ruach, his spirit. So if we are physically weak, if we are physically destroyed somehow, and when I'm talking about physical, I'm not talking only about our body, it's about ourselves, emotionally weak, and also heart, maybe our heart is broken. In those moments is when the most we need to find and seek Yahuwah, because he is the one that is going to give us the strength. And we know, the enemy is like a roaring lion that is looking, is written by Peter, is looking for a moment in order to devour us. And this is exactly what we see happening in this portion. So let's continue reading. And it says in the verse 8, "For your servant vowed a vow while I dwelt at Geshur in Aram, saying, if Yahuwah indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I shall serve Yahuwah. And the sovereign said to him, go in peace. And he rose up and went to Hebron." And listen to this, because here we start to see the real intention of this man. It says, "But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, as soon as you hear the voice of the shofar, then you shall say, Absalom is sovereign in Hebron." And with Absalom went 200 men from Jerusalem who were invited. And they went along unsuspectingly and did not know the matter at all. Absalom also sent to Ahitophel, the Gilonite, counselor of David, from his city, from Gilo, while he slaughtered slaughterings. And it came to be that the conspiracy became potent, for the people with Absalom kept increasing. So we see here the real intention of Absalom. He didn't care about his father. He didn't care about that David was the anointed of Yahuwah. He was seeking his own benefit. He was seeking his own understanding. He was trying to gain the heart of the people because he had the purpose to overtake the throne, to become the king. And I'm wondering how many times we have gone through a similar situation ourselves, that we are seeking our own understanding. We are seeking our own desires without seeking the face of Yahuwah and understanding what Yahuwah wants for us. We cannot be wise according to our own understanding. The only way to be wise and to receive wisdom is by seeking the face of Yahuwah, because the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Yahuwah, is the reverence of Yahuwah, to Yahuwah. So I think, this story speaks a lot when we talk about our own walking, our own mindset, our own attitude. When we think in our relationship with Allah, is that we need to deny ourselves and not seeking our own desires. We need to seek what's the will of Yahuwah to our own bodies, to our own lives, instead of trying to seek our own benefit. But also speaking, I do believe even beyond, is speaking about the people of Yahuwah, and speaking also somehow in a kind of foreshadow of things to come. But let's continue reading, and we will spend a little bit of the last thing that I said. So it says, starting in the verse 13, then a messenger came to David saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. And David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, rise up, let us flee, for none of us shall escape from Absalom. Go in haste, lest he overtake us quickly and bring evil upon us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword. And the sovereign servant said to the sovereign, look, your servants shall do according to all my master the sovereign chooses. And the sovereign went out, and all his household at his feet. But the sovereign left 10 women, concubines, to look after the house. So the sovereign went out, and all the people at his feet, and they stood still at the last house. And all his servants were passing on at his side, and all the Keratites, and all the Pelitites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gad, were passing on before the sovereign. And the sovereign said to Ittai the Gittite, why do you go, you also with us? Turn back and remain with the sovereign, for you are a foreigner, and also an exile from your own place. And let me stop there just to make some comments to what we have read so far. So we don't know, it's not written here if David consulted with Yahuwah on what to do. If we analyze the end of the story, most probably he did. When he heard about the intention of Absalom, he decided to leave the city. He decided to escape because he knew that battle and fight was coming against him. And he decided to hide himself from the wrath of his son. Sometimes, it is written in the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet in Hebrew, there are time for certain things and time for others. It's time to fight and time to hide. And I think this is exactly what David was doing here, just listening and hearing what Yahuwah was conducting him to do. And we will see later on in this chapter that somehow in the way that David was expressing himself is that he was remembering that he needed to trust in Yahuwah, that no matter the persecution, this new persecution that was coming to his own life, after all the distresses he went through, this new distress was coming. He knew that he needed to trust in Elohim in order to be restored once again. And we see, people following the anointed of Yahuwah. And I want to mention something here. We have been called, you and me, to follow Yahuwah Elohim. We have not been called to follow men or to follow women. We have been called out from the system of the world. We have been removed and taken by Yahuwah through Yahushua HaMashiach from the system of the world, and we have been brought into his kingdom. So we are commanded to follow Yahuwah Elohim and not men. And Elohim has assigned Yahushua HaMashiach Amelech, the anointed one, the one that is leading us in the way back to Yahuwah Elohim, and he's leading us in the way to the kingdom, that kingdom that is going to be established here on earth. Every time that we are following men or following women, we can be get astray. And why I mention this in this passage, we see that Absalom, because of the intention of his heart, he started to orchestrate something in order to gain the heart of the people. But let me ask you something. Was him the anointed of Yahuwah? Was him the person assigned by Yahuwah to lead his people? The answer is no. So, what happened with the people that started to give his heart to Absalom? They forgot. They forgot that they had to follow Yahuwah Elohim. They forgot that they needed to put his trust in Yahuwah Elohim. And they did totally the opposite. They put their trust in Absalom. It was the son of the king. Yes, it was the son of the king, but it wasn't the king assigned by Yahuwah. He wasn't anointed. So why are you bringing this up? Sometimes we can fail on the same. In the same thing that the people of Israel was failing back then, that we put our trust in men and women, that we follow men and women, that we have people around us that somehow, maybe with the intention, with a bad intention or with a good intention, it could be any of those scenarios, are gaining the heart of the people. And we have the tendency, and in my own experience, in case you don't know, I grew up in a church. I'm a pastor kid. I was my entire life in a church until the age of 20-something years. And in church, in Christian church, you used to see this kind of situations and experiences. And it's not because of the church. It's also, you can see in different other places and different aspects of life that we have the tendency, this a fleshy tendency to follow men and women. And this is exactly the mistake that the people of Israel did in this portion. They put their trust and their heart in Absalom. They forgot completely the anointed of Yahuwah. That's why, Yahushua HaMashiach said, don't call anybody your father. Don't call anybody your Rabbi. Because there's only one Rabbi, one teacher, and that's the Son of Elohim, is Yahushua HaMashiach. We are being called to follow his steps, and we are being called to put our trust in Elohim. We cannot fall in the same trap and in the same mistake of Israel. We need to follow the example of the people we just read here. Those people, the Hittites, the Pelishtites, the Kerethites, that is so interesting, because they were not even from Israel, from the tribes of Israel. They were people from outside. They were the Goyim, they were the Gentiles, if we want to say so, that followed David from God. And they were faithful to the anointed of Yahuwah. This is exactly what we need to do. We need to put our eyes in the anointed of Yahuwah and Yahushua HaMashiach. We need to put our trust and our heart in Elohim, because he never failed. We human beings failed every day. We human beings failed all the time. The only one that is not going to fail us is Yahuwah Elohim and Yahushua, his son. So let's not put our trust in men and women. Let's remember day by day that we need to put our trust in him, and we need to look at him in order for him to guide us in the way we need to go, in order for him to guide us in the decisions we need to make in our life, in order for him to guide us in this time of trouble, if we need to fight or we need to hide. If we do so, he will be with us all the time. And if we don't do so and we put the trust in men and women, we are lost. We are going to be lost. So let's continue reading. And the sovereign said to Ittai the Gittite, why do you go, you also with us? Turn back and remain with the sovereign, referring himself, David, referring as the sovereign, to Absalom as the sovereign, the new sovereign. For you are a foreigner and also an exile from your own place. You came yesterday, and should I today make you wander up and down with us? When I'm going wherever I am going, return and take your brothers back. Loving commitment and truth be with you. That was the compassion from David. He knew what was going to happen with his life. He knew that he was going to hide and he was going through difficult times. And he saw these people that wanted to be with him, that they were faithful to him. But he was compassionate because he didn't want them to suffer the same thing that he was going to suffer. And that's speaking in the same way that Yahuwah was speaking to us, that the greater matters of Torah is compassion. We need to practice compassion. Sometimes we don't do it because we are fleshy, Sometimes we focus so much in ourselves, on our desires, in the same way that Absalom was doing here in this portion, that we don't act in compassion, in the same way that David was acting in compassion, in the same way that our Elohim is a compassionate one. And let's continue in the verse 21. And Ittai answered the sovereign and said, that's the attitude we need to follow as an example. As Yahuwah lives, he's a Gentile. He's not one of the native one from the tribe of Israel. He's a Gentile, and he's a beautiful picture of what Yahuwah has planned for the entire humanity, is to serve him and to follow him, to be part of him. As Yahuwah lives, and as my master the sovereign lives, in whatever place my master the sovereign is, whether in death or life, let your servant also be there. I remember what the Paul was talking about in the book of Romans. Who is going to separate us from the love of Mashiach? Nor death nor life. Nothing can separate us from his love. It's the same faithfulness that we see in this person, Ittai, toward David. It's the same heart that we need to have for Mashiach. And we know that Mashiach, Yahushua, is part of the seed, is part of the descendants of David. That was the promise to the house of David. Mashiach is coming from him. So, what we see here, this Gentile loving the anointed of Yahuwah, acknowledging the anointed of Yahuwah, and loving him at that point that he is willing to be in death and in life with him, is the example for you and me on how we need to love Yahushua HaMashiach, the one leading us on the way back to our Father. Therefore, David said to Ittai in verse 22, go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite and all his men and all the little ones who were with him passed over. And all the land was weeping with a loud voice, and all the people were passing over. And the sovereign himself was passing over the Wadi Kidron, and all the people were passing over toward the way of the wilderness. And see, Zadok also came, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of Elohim. And they set down the ark of of Elohim. And Abiathar went up until all the people completed passing over from the city. You see, the Kohanim, the priests, were with David. They knew that David was anointed. They were bringing the ark with the presence of Yahuwah, together with the anointed of Yahuwah. But David knew that something more was in the mind of Yahuwah. Maybe he wasn't aware what was the purpose of Yahuwah at that point, but he knew that Yahuwah was doing something. Because it's written in the verse 25, and the sovereign said to Zadok, take the ark of the Elohim back to the city. If I find favor in the eyes of Yahuwah, listen to this, then he shall bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling. But if he says thus, I have not delighted in you, here I am, let him do to me as seems good in his eyes. That's the attitude, trusting in Yahuwah. Yahuwah will bring me back if that's his desire. Let's continue reading, and I will share at the end of this chapter something that I see somehow is a foreshadow that is beautiful. So let's continue reading. In the verse 27, and the sovereign said to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Return to the city. You know, even in this question, is something marvelous that somehow is aligned to what I said. Zadok the priest, also a seer, a prophet. He should be able to see beyond what was going to happen, what was the plan of Yahuwah. I think with just this question, David was trusting that Yahuwah was doing something, and maybe Zadok was going to be able to understand what was the purpose of Yahuwah. He said, return to the city in peace, and your two sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jehonathan son of Abiathar. See, I am waiting in the desert plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. And Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of the Elohim back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. And David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up. And he had his head covered, and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads, and went up, weeping as they went up. And David was informed, saying, Ahitophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Yahuwah, I pray you, make the counsel of Ahitophel foolish. And it came to be that David came to the summit, where he bowed himself before Elohim, and saw Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe turned and dust on his feet, on his head. And David said to him, if you pass on with me, then you shall become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I am your servant, O sovereign, one servant of your father, but now I am your servant, then you shall nullify the counsel of Ahitophel for me. And are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? And it shall be that every matter you hear from the sovereign's house, you should report to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. See, there with them are their two sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jehonathan, Abiathar's son. And by them you shall send me every matter you hear. And Hushai, David's friend, went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. There are so many nuggets here that we can speak about, because, you know, in case you know this, the Kidron Valley in Jerusalem is a valley that is separating the Mount Zion, is where Jerusalem was established, and the Mount of Olives. So these are these two valleys, these two mountains, and in the center, the valley of Kidron. And the interesting thing is that next and beside this valley is a cemetery. And you know, nowadays, you know, it's the biggest cemetery in Israel. And you know, actually, when you look from the old city, the current old city of Jerusalem, to the Mount of Olives, you will see a lot of graves. It's almost white with graves. So it's a cemetery, and the oldest cemetery is over there. It's close to the Valley of Kidron. So I think it's so representative that the way out, the escape route that David took was through Kidron, and he was going to the desert, to the wilderness, because, you know, the wilderness is very close to Jerusalem. I've been there for several times, so it's very close to Jerusalem. And the way to go is going to the east. You go from Jerusalem, you need to go up in the Mount of Olives, and you need to start walking straight, and you will go into the east in the wilderness. So this is exactly what David did, taking this route through the valley of death. And they were weeping and they were going up into the Mount of Olives. Do you remember a similar story in the opposite way around? Was Yahushua HaMashiach. Before he was betrayed and before he was taken captive and delivered to the nations, Pilate, the Romans, he was weeping in Gethsemane, and this is in the Mount of Olives. He was weeping because he knew his hour come, that he was going to go through death, through persecution. And persecution not only by hands of the Romans, the Gentiles, persecution by his own house. Same thing that we see happening here. David being persecuted by his own, by his son. And we see this parallel of this emotion, weeping, understanding that everything that was built was being destroyed, but with the hope in heart. In the same way that we see in the words of David here, understanding that it was the will of Yahuwah for him to return, he will do it. You see the parallel that Yahushua gave his life for us, going through persecution by his own, going through persecution by the Gentiles, giving his own life, but putting his eyes and his sight into the reward, into the final target and final purpose. Understanding that it was the will of Yahuwah, he was going to return to life and he was going to return to reign. And this is exactly our expectation, that he is coming back in the same way that David, and we will see most probably next week, is coming back as the king. Now, I see other parallels here that I want to share with you. I see a pattern here of the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist. I see the pattern of the 10 tribes of Israel with the 10 concubines. I see something really important, and I remember I mentioned this. If you have not in the past, if you have not taken a look in a video that Steve Mutri and his channel did, I think 2 months ago, when he's talking about the Antichrist, he mentioned something really interesting. And I think he's right on this point. At least I feel and I think in the same way, that when we understand about the Antichrist, or the Anti-Mashiach in Hebrew, Anti-Messiah, the only way that the current Jewish people will accept a Messiah that we know is not the Messiah, the real Messiah is going to be the anti-Messiah, Antichrist. If this person is coming from their own people, needs to be a Jewish people, a Jewish person, or needs to have some connections, bloodline connections. And actually, Steve Motria started to talk about this, and that video I will recommend. I think the title of the video is the Antichrist. Go to his channel, to the family, and you will find this video over there. He expanded more than this comment. And but why I bringing this up, because we see here exactly the same happening. It's something from the same family. It's somebody from the same family. Somebody from the same seed, trying to take the throne, trying to win the heart of the people, trying to make the people astray from the true way. It is written in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament, I think it's in the letters of Shaul or Peter, that there will come people that will incline the ear in order to deviate from the true doctrine, the true teachings, in order to make people astray from the true teachings. And this is exactly we see happening with Absalom. And we know through the prophecies that this is exactly what the Antichrist, the anti-Messiah, is going to do. So could it be that the lawless one that is coming, it will come by the same house? I do believe that it could is a possibility based on what we are reading here in this portion. I see in Absalom a foreshadow of the anti-Mashiach, the Antichrist, and trying to take the throne. And actually, I remember in this moment is that what Mashiach said, I came to my own and they didn't receive me. The time will come that and I came in the name of my Father and you didn't receive me. The time it's coming when it will come one in his own name, and then that one you will receive him. We see it here happening as well in this portion. Absalom came in his own name, and people fall in love with him, trusting in him, following him. We cannot fall in the same mistake. So I think there are so many parallels to what's happening. And the last parallel that I see that I think is interesting as well is that David decided to hide himself in the wilderness. Let me put the scripture over here that I remember by heart. It's in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, saying in the verse 12, in verse 6, about the future that is coming ahead. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. And let's go down here. It says, and when the dragon saw he had been thrown to the air, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. And the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. And out of his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river after the woman to cause her to swept away by the river. And the earth held the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. So we see here persecution in the same way we see in the portion today. David, the true king, the anointed of Yahuwah, and the people following him being persecuted by one of his own. In the same way, we will see this taking place. And I do believe somehow it's taking place in nowadays. And we will see this increasing and increasing, this persecution, until the lawless one is totally visible in this world. Because I think today is working behind the scenes, most probably, with everything that's going on around us, until we see this lawless one. And I do believe we will see it because, you know my position already. You have been following Virtual House Church and what I'm saying throughout the years. I do believe we will go through tribulation. So we will see all these things happening. And somehow it's going to be a test for all of us. Is where we have our heart in the same way that the people of Israel were tested in this portion. If we are going to give our heart to the true anointed one, or we are going to give our heart to the one that is trying to take the throne by force. It's going to be a critical, a lifetime changing decision that we need to prepare ourselves for the time to come. So let's continue and let's read. Let's go back to 2 Samuel. And let's read together the chapter 16. So, and David had passed on a little from the summit. And that's an additional the foreshadow as well. He stopped in the summit of Mount of Olives. You remember what happened in the summit of Mount of Olives is where Yahushua HaMashiach was lifted to the heavens to Shimei in order to go beside, to the right side of the throne of Elohim. He's waiting there to come back. So there are so many similarities and parallels to what we believe. So let's continue. And so Ziba, the servants of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddle donkeys, and on them 200 loaves, and 100 cakes of raisins, and 100 summer fruit, and a skin of wine. And the sovereign said to Ziba, why do you have this? And Ziba said, the donkeys are for the sovereign's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for the weary to drink in the wilderness. Yahuwah will always put people in our way because he's so compassionate, because he loved us so much. He, he will always put people in our way to bring us of his blessing. David was in a moment of desperation and persecution. And we see loving commitment also in place here because David in the past restored Ziba to his position in the house of his master. It was Jonathan, Yehonatan in Hebrew. And we see Ziba being loving, committed to David and bringing and helping David in the time of his trouble. And this speaking, as I said, that Yahuwah will put people always through our own life, people that will help us. And we need to be just attentive and acknowledging is that when that happens, is Yahuwah behind the scene, helping us and sending us of his love when we need it the most. And the sovereign said in the verse 3, and where is the son of your master? And Ziba said to the sovereign, see, he remains in Jerusalem, for he said, today the house of Israel is going to return the reign of my father to me. We see another one was Mephibosheth that David took into his own house, was the son of Jonathan, also being blind and focusing in his own desires, forgetting the loving commitment of the anointed one of Yahuwah. Let's not fall into the same mistake. And the sovereign said to Ziba in the verse 4, see, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours. And Ziba said, I have bowed myself. Let me find favor in your eyes, my master or sovereign. Humility in the same way that Yahushua will reward us if we remain humble, if we remain faithful to him. That's the reward that we will get at the end if we are faithful and we persevere until the end. And we endure until the end. And when sovereign David came to Bahurim, he saw a man from the clan of the house of Shaul, whose name was Shimei. That's the part that is so interesting in this portion because we see different type of attitudes. We see different type of people. We see different type of mood. We see different examples for us to decide what we want to follow. Good examples and bad examples. And that's the beauty of the scripture, this is so close to, how to say it, it's so close to real experiences, real life experiences. We see this happening all over the time in different places, no matter where we are. We see this type of behaviors in different people. So it's something that we should keep it in our heart in order to remember that the way we need to act, the way that we need to act according to the righteousness of the kingdom and the lifestyle that Yahuwah has instructed us on how to live. So we see this guy, Shimei, son of Gera, coming from there. It says in the verse 5, he came out cursing as he came. What it represents? It represents persecution. Yahushua was saying that, if they have persecuted me and they have hated me, for sure they will persecute and hate you as well. Because the servant is not higher than or bigger than his master. So we see this happening as well, persecution after persecution. It's teaching us that we need to endure and we need to have the strength of Yahuwah in order to endure, looking into beyond the situation, looking into what's coming and what's the purpose of Yahuwah at the end. So it says in the verse 6, and he pelted with stones David and all the servants of sovereign David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right and on his left. And this is what Shimei said as he cursed, get out, O man of blood, a man of Belial. Let me stop there because I forgot to mention something. In the chapter 15, Absalom said to David, let me go to Hebron to pay my vows to Yahuwah. It was a deceit. And he was using Yahuwah's name in order to bring this deceit. He was lying. He was presenting himself as a one wanted and serving Yahuwah Elohim. He was presenting himself as a servant that wanted to pay his vows by giving offerings to Yahuwah. It's the same thing that the Antichrist, the anti-Mashiach will do. And also, in our lives, we need to be so attentive and ask for discernment when we encounter with more people. First, not to follow men and women, as I said. We are being called to follow Yahushua HaMashiach and put our trust in Elohim. But also to understand if we are following Yahuwah, being serving Yahuwah, or this is something that is only a screen that somehow is deviating the attention where we need to put, where we need to be. So, in this case was Absalom, but also Shimei. He is cursing David and his people as men of Belial. He is, telling a story totally opposite and in the other way around. We are the good ones following Yahuwah Elohim. You are the men of Belial. And it's really interesting because this is exactly what's happening in these days. I was so surprised when I was taking a look in some news last weeks about the message in some areas of Christianity is a pure message of love, but not at all a message of righteousness, not at all a message of truth, not at all a message of repentance, shua, to go back, not at all a message to change our way of life, not at all a message of trusting Yahuwah and not in the system of the world. It's just a pure message of love. No matter where we are and what we do, Elohim will love us. So we see today, and again, this will increase even more in the time ahead, where people will present themselves as the servants of Elohim, but they are not. Where people will present themselves as the ones serving Elohim and cursing the true servants of Elohim, saying that they are men of Belial. Have you seen this happening lately? I have seen it. And I think we will see it even more. We will see it even more. So what to do about it is to seek refuge in Yahuwah, is to open our ears to what his desire is, to not to be silent, is to act, but not act according to our own understanding, is let the Ruach of Yahuwah guide us on what we need to do, keeping ourselves in the righteous way of Yahuwah, living in his righteousness, judging with the right rulings of his kingdom. So what happened in this case? This guy Shimei was cursing David and his followers. He was cursing the anointed of Yahuwah in the same way that, Yahushua was cursed, in the same way that Yahushua was persecuted, in the same way that the followers of Yahushua had been persecuted throughout history. So he was saying, Yahuwah has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Shaul in the verse 8, in whose place you have reigned. And Yahuwah has given the reign into the hand of Absalom, your son. And see, You are your own evil, for you are a man of blood. And Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the sovereign, why should this dead dog curse my master, the sovereign? Please let me pass over and take off his head. You remember what Peter did in the Garden of Gethsemane? He took his sword and cut the ear of the guardian. It is a very similar situation happening over here. The king, the rightful king, being persecuted. But what the king said in the verse 10, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? For let him curse, even because Yahuwah has said to him, curse David. And who could say, why did you do that? And David said to Abishai and all his servants, see how my son who came from my own body seeks my life, and how much more now this Benjamite? Leave him alone, and let him curse, for Yahuwah has spoken to him. And this is so interesting because David, let me read the last one in the 12. If so be, Yahuwah does look on my affliction, and Yahuwah shall return good to me for his cursing today. Yahuwah was using this person, and David was able to understand that. David was trusting in Yahuwah. David was completely trusting in Yahuwah and follow Yahuwah completely at this point, hoping that Yahuwah was the one restoring him soon and removing him from this affliction and this desperate situation. But he also was recognizing that Yahuwah used person in different ways. This was a test for David. And we can go through different situations in our life that maybe Yahuwah using people around us, and Yahuwah is allowing some situations to go in our lives in order to test our heart, if we really are faithful to him or not. Let's continue in the verse 13. And as David and his men went this way in the way, Shimei walked alongside him on the hillside, and cursed, and he went, and threw stones at him, and kicked up dust. And the sovereign and all the people who were with him became weary, and they refreshed themselves there. And Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahitophel was with him. And it came to be when Hushai the Archite, the friend of David, had come to Absalom, that Hushai said to Absalom, let the sovereign live, let the sovereign live. And Absalom said to Hushai, is this your loving commitment to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? And Hushai said to Absalom, and this was the friend of David, if you remember, David was instructing him to go and serve Absalom in order to understand what was going on and to send words to him in the wilderness. So he was, being faithful to David until this point. No, I am for the one whom Yahuwah and these people and all the men of Israel have chosen, and with him I remain. It's important what he said here, because somehow he's recognizing, in the same way that David was recognizing a few verses ago, is that Yahuwah is the one in control of everything. Yahuwah is the one allowing things to happen, because he has a purpose that sometimes we are not able to see. So that's why we need to listen to his voice and ask him to let us understand what is his will. So what's going to happen in this amazing plan of restoration he has for this creation? He has been allowing all of this to happen because of a purpose. Maybe all of this that the only fact that you and me are here and serving Yahuwah and walking this way, maybe wasn't possible if we have not gone through difficult situations in our lives. So, sometimes we are being pushed internally with our thoughts and our emotions to complain in the same way that Israel was complaining in the wilderness. Why me? Why I'm going through this? Why I have gone through this? On those times when we need to think that Yahuwah is doing something in our lives and giving us the opportunity to trust in him. And David is giving us the good example here in this portion. How, in time of troubles and time of persecution, We need to trust in Yahuwah because he's doing something that maybe at that moment we are not able to see. It says in the verse 19, and besides, whom should I serve? Should it not be before his son? As I have served before your father, so I am before you. And Absalom said to Ahitophel, give your advice, what we should do. And Ahitophel said to Absalom, go in to your father's concubines, whom he has left to look after the house. And all Israel shall hear that you have made yourself a stench to your father, and the hands of all who are with you shall be strong. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house. And Absalom went in to his father's concubines before the eyes of all Israel. Now the advice Ahitophel gave in those days was as if one had inquired at the word of Elohim. So was all the advice of Ahitophel both to David and to Absalom. This person was so well considered as a wise man that everybody was considering that he was providing the word of Elohim. We know that what he advised to Absalom was totally against the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah. He was pushing Absalom to commit an abomination according to the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah. That's why, if we compare Absalom with the Antichrist, the Anti-Mashiach, the Anti-Mashiach is being considered the lawless one, the one that it doesn't have Torah, is Torah-less one. And this is exactly what Absalom was following. What Absalom did is to broke Torah. Why? Because he was following his own desire and his own understanding. But it's so beautiful, even in this situation of persecution, even in the situation that the lawless one was taking the throne, Yahuwah was allowing some faithful servants to remain in Jerusalem, to remain in order to restore the kingdom to the anointed one. The same happened when we think in the story of Daniel. All of them were in Babylon. They were under the authority of the world. They were under the authority of Babylon. But they were serving Yahuwah even in that place. They were not serving the paganism, and they were not serving and following the king of Babylon. They were serving Yahuwah Elohim. So Yahuwah has always been put in place a remnant of his people, a remnant that is following completely his heart, a remnant that is following completely his ways. And this, we see it in this case, Hushai was part of that remnant that was faithful to the king and to Yahuwah. And he was there as part of a foreshadow of the remnant of Elohim. This other foreshadow that is so interesting, and I forgot to mention in the previous chapter. When David told Hushai to remain in Jerusalem in order to hear the word and to inform him about what was the intention of Absalom, he also mentioned about the two sons of the priest, the son of Zadok and the son of Abiathar. Can you see the picture of the two witnesses at the end times? Then they are going to come into the world. They are going to be the one delivering the true messages and the gospel, the good news of Yahuwah. They are going to be the one judging was the Absalom, the Antichrist, the lawless one, will do. The two ones bringing the righteousness of the kingdom and the judgment of the kingdom of Yahuwah into the world. The same thing we see happening here, the faithful and the remnant. And most probably in these two sons of the priest being a representation of the two witnesses, that they were hearing what was going on. and they were preparing somehow the way for the return of David, the return of the king. We, you and me, are part of the remnant today. You and me are in this world that's not under the authority yet of the king, of the Melech, Yahushua. We somehow are in Babylon, but we are the remnant, and we need to act following the example of the Gentiles that were following David, following the example of Hushai, following the example of the two sons of the priest, that they were faithful even in times of persecution, that they were faithful no matter that the rest around them put their trust in the wrong one. We need to follow and endure until the end, understanding that our hope is in Yahuwah, understanding that if we hope in Yahuwah and we endure until the end, we will see with our eyes the return of the Melech, the king returning to his place. And we will see part of it in the coming chapters. So, brothers and sisters, this is what I have to share with you today. I do think this is a beautiful foreshadow, as I said, to what is coming. It's a beautiful foreshadow of what needs to be our attitude. It's a beautiful foreshadow that we need to follow Yahushua HaMashiach. There are so many comments that, why we need to follow Jesus, Yahushua, why we need to trust just in Elohim. But we need to remember, Yahuwah has put a mediator, and this has been from the very beginning. In the case of Moses, we see a mediator. It was the people of Israel asking this. Our forefathers asked for a mediator when they were in Sinai. And the mediator was set by Yahuwah and has been throughout history. It changed from, the priest or from the shofet, the judges. It changed later to the king. And that mediator, our king today, is Yahushua HaMashiach, the only one that can lead us in the way to Yahuwah, in the same way that we saw in this portion, is the anointed of Yahuwah, is the anointed of Yahuwah, is the Mashiach. That's the meaning of the word Mashiach, is anointed one of Yahuwah. That's why we need to follow his steps. That's why we need to follow him completely. And by following him completely, he's the one being the mediator between us and Elohim. It doesn't mean that we are, by following Yahushua and trusting in him, we are going to not put our trust in Yahuwah. Not at all, because Yahuwah, Elohim, him are echad. So it's not contradictory. The opposite. By following Yahushua HaMashiach and his steps, we are following the way of Yahuwah. And if we endure the way, understanding that we are following the king, we are going to receive the reward in the same way that we will see later on next week in the portion, how the king is being returned to his right place. So, brothers and sisters, this is it. Thank you so much for joining us today in Virtual House Church. It's always a blessing to be with you here, sharing the word of Yahuwah. It's always a blessing to be connected with all of you. I see 140 of you connected today, and that's an amazing blessing. Sorry if I didn't take a look in the comments. I have to be honest with you. Every time that I take a look in the comments, I miss the connection on what I'm hearing, what I have to share. So I really hope that you have some answers in case you have a question here from the moderators and from the other brothers. And I really hope that you enjoy and have a blessed time here studying this portion. So really hope to see you next week. We're going to end this broadcast as we always do with the Aaronic blessing. But in the meantime, I really hope that Yahuwah will be with all of you during this week, that you will have a blessed end of Shabbat, in case you are still having Shabbat in your time zone, and you are going to have a very blessed week. So until next week, Shabbat Shalom, Yahuwah be with you all. Amen.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה ישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום. Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah te bendiga y te guarde. Yahuwah haga resplandecer su rostro en ti y tenga de ti compasión. Yahuwah alce su rostro sobre ti